What's up, world? Let me tell you about this beard growth oil I got from 12 tribes on Earth. 8 ounces of oily goodness with a nozzle that prevents sprays and spills, and soft ingredients that make it perfect addition to anyone's morning routine. From coconut to castor, all these oils are hand chosen. After using this herbal blend, the biggest thing I noticed is how soft, how strong my hair was, and how good I feel. Pick up your bottle today and make your beard the star of the show.
Shalom, family. Good to see you all. Hope you're doing well. Uh, we're going to talk about something that has happened for the first time, and I'm sure many other states are going to follow this. I sure hope my state does, because I sure don't want to see any of these data centers in my area. So, New York already have data centers, but the governor has decided to block them from constructing any more. There's been a lot of complaints about the electricity, the water, the things that we all know, and the sounds that these data centers emit, not to mention the artificial light at night. And people had enough. So, this governor, I'm sure after having a lot of complaints about these data centers, is now freezing them from constructing anymore. So I believe New York got 163 data centers. And of course, they want to put more up, but as of now, they can't because the governor has signed the bill and they are blocked. Now, I'm hearing other states, they haven't done it yet, like Maine, Arizona is another one. California, I think, is looking to do the same thing. But so far, New York is the only one that has signed it into law. So hopefully, this will set a precedent and they will shut down these data centers. I mean, how many do you need for real? How many do you really need? And I know I did another live on this about a month ago, and Elon Musk is looking at ways to put them in the sky, to have floating data centers up in the sky. That is overkill. That is just absolutely insanity, and it's just pure greed. And of course, all of these rich people, they don't care what this is going to do to you in the long term as far as your health is concerned. They could care less. It's all about making money, and they don't care how it impacts you. That's the problem. And it is impacting a lot of people, and people are reporting they see changes even in their pets, like their pets are behaving differently now. So it's no telling what it is. And then I did the story a week ago how the data centers in Wyoming, in Cheyenne, they put some rare deadly bacteria into the water. So at the end of the day, we know these things are not safe and they're not going to make them safe. I'm sure they're making millions of dollars per data center. That's why they keep constructing them all over the place. And it's the same people, Elon and, Meta and Facebook, it's the same rich people over and over and over. It's not even different ones, it's the same rich ones. So, yes, it's very demonic. Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Christopher Jones. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. But, I'm sure New Yorkers are feeling much better about this. Because, like I said, they got the same complaints that people have all over the country. Okay, please give me a one if you can see my screen. Thank you.
Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, just became the first governor in America to freeze new AI data centers. Today, she signed an executive order that pauses state permitting for new hyperscale data centers for up to a year.
First, we want to be the first to get it right. And what that entails is ensuring that these companies, these huge hyperscalers, will make sure that they cover their own costs for power. Either bring your own power or pay a premium to use the grid, because I already have a shortage of power for the existing businesses and our hardworking New Yorkers who are paying through the nose in utility bills. I can't say they're going to be charged more.
It only hits the biggest facilities, the ones that need 50 megawatts of power or more. During that pause, her environmental agency stops issuing the discretionary permits these projects need, and state regulators write a new set of rules on how much power these facilities can pull from the grid, how much water they use, and who pays for the transmission lines to feed them. New York is the first state in the country to do this. Oakwood doesn't frame this as a climate order or a safety order, it is an affordability order. A single hyperscale data center can pull as much electricity as a small town, and the grid was never built to carry that. Someone has to pay to expand it. New power plants, new transmission lines, upgrades across the whole system. Utilities do not absorb that cost, they spread it across every customer on the grid, which means the monthly electricity bill for an ordinary New Yorker quietly climbs to fund infrastructure for private server farms that they will never step foot in. That is the burden that Hochul is pointing at. The taxpayer ends up subsidizing the AI build out through their utility bill without ever agreeing to it. Her fix is to make the data centers pay their own way, either generate their own power or pay a premium to pull from the grid. So the cost lands on the companies instead of the residents. But the line she drew has a hole in it. In her own interview, Hochul says she does not want to touch the data centers that power university research and hospitals, only the giant commercial AI facilities.
But I want to make sure we came up with a rational number. For example, I don't want to include data centers that support research centers and universities and healthcare organizations. So we came up with a threshold of 50 megawatts as defining the larger ones. Those smaller are not affected.
So the cutoff that they landed on is 50 megawatts of power. Above it, you are paused. Below it, you are fine. The problem is that megawatts measure how big a data center is, not what it is used for. A data center is not built for one job. A single facility can run hospital records, a university research cluster, a startup's app, and an AI training run at the same time inside the same building. The power meter cannot tell them apart, and the research and medical computing she says she wants to protect is exactly the kind of work that actually keeps getting bigger and hungrier for power. The threshold that she set to shield it could be the very thing that blocks it. Here's why this reaches far beyond New York. For 2 years, Washington has treated AI as national security. Build at all cost, improve every data center, or China wins the race. And from a pure economic standpoint, that has looked like the only winning move. But the two countries are racing with opposite weaknesses. America has the best chips on earth and leads the world in raw computing power, but is constrained on electricity, and the grid is the bottleneck. China is the opposite. It has built a massive surplus of cheap power and has energy to spare, but American export controls have cut it from the most advanced chips. So compute is the bottleneck. Power is the only input America is actually short on, and one can argue that Hochul just made it scarcer for these companies. The real bottleneck in the AI race, at least on the US side, is power, and power does not get approved inside a data center. It gets approved by politicians who answer to voters holding an electricity bill. New York just showed that the thing most likely to slow America down is not China, but rather the American democracy working as intended. It is Americans deciding they are not willing to pay for. So here is the question we're sitting with. If staying ahead of China and in turn future prosperity for the country depends on building the very thing that drives up your electricity bill, who should pay for it? The companies racing to win or the people who just want to keep the lights on?
You know, we have some breaking news that came into the newsroom just a few minutes ago regarding data centers, a topic that's very important to so many Americans. You have New York Governor, Democrat Governor Kathy Hochul, is set to sign, basically, we're learning, an executive order today imposing the country's very first statewide moratorium on hyperscale data centers for up to a year at this point. The governor says it's so the state can create rules to protect the environment and the energy grid. Some are already pushing back on this, including some people in her own party. We have this right here from Senator John Fetterman saying, if you can see it right there, China wins. That's coming from Democrat Senator John Fetterman. What is your reaction to hearing this morning?
Well, Senator Fetterman is right. You know, if the United States backs away, drags our feet on data centers, China wins. Nobody wants that. Look, the green energy mandates, those are what drive up energy costs. New York has expensive electricity, and they produce less electricity today than they did 10 years ago. That's the problem. That's a New York State energy policy problem. It's not a data center problem. With President Trump's ratepayer protection pledge, data center development, that's the way to get your electricity prices down, your job opportunities, and your wages up.
Now, that seems to be kind of like the fault line here. You have some people on one side saying, yes, we have to have these data centers to keep up with China. Then you have folks in many communities worried about their electricity bill going up. What is the Trump administration doing to try to hold some of these companies accountable to make sure they maybe absorb some of these costs? What are you doing?
Look, the Trump administration ratepayer protection pledge, we were implementing it before we even released the pledge, but it's to get the developers of these data centers to bring money up front into communities to invest in the electrical infrastructure, to grow the capacity to produce electricity. And all of them have come with multi-year freezes on electricity prices. They're actually been used as a mechanism to stop the rise in electricity, create just enormous local tax revenues, job opportunities, and higher wages. If you visit the communities where a modern data center is being developed today, they are thrilled. Their electricity prices are locked in for 3 or 4 years. The rises are over. New job opportunities are there. Local businesses are booming. Local restaurants and shops and stores are seeing increased activity. Look, done right, of course, they can cause problems. If you've got green energy mandates that doesn't allow your state to produce any more electricity, well, a data center development there is not going to work so well. But the problem is those state green energy mandates, it's not the data center development. They're a force to drive prices down.
The bottom line is progress shouldn't arrive with a higher utility bill, deleted water supply, or noise pollution. So we have no choice but to address these challenges created by these massive facilities. That is why today I'll be signing the nation's first ever statewide moratorium on hyperscale data centers. And I said this in my State of the State, if you want to come here, you have to bring your own power or pay a premium to use our grid. This is what I need for the moratorium for. Lay out the framework. You can come, but the community has to welcome you. You have to give substantial benefits. I'm talking about millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars to communities and benefits. They're doing it in other parts of the country. A giant data center, that 150 megawatt center, which is what our standard is, anything higher is now under the moratorium. That one size consumes as much power as 50,000 homes.
Big news out of New York. We just became the first state to enact a moratorium on hyperscale data centers starting today. The executive order that the governor signed includes data centers that are bigger than 50 megawatts. So there are still some data centers that we need to fight.
And while this is a huge win, we know that it's only going to be a pause up until a year, and that we have communities across New York State that have data center fights that they're working against. And we need to stop Stamp Data Center near in Tonawanda Nation in Western New York. You know, we need to stop the series of proposals of data center to the Mohawk Nation. Let's use this as momentum for all the local site fights that we need to win.
This is only possible because thousands of working class New Yorkers spoke up. And this is a fight against the tech oligarchy and the data centers they're building. They're polluting both noise, air pollution through their generators, and they're hiking up utility bills statewide. And the voice of New Yorkers was heard both in the legislature in June when the legislation passed, as well as in the moratorium that Governor Hochul cited. We know that when communities come together and organize and fight, they can win, even up against big tech, even up against the fossil fuel industry. We're seeing that in New York, and the next step is a nationwide moratorium on data centers. So call your member of Congress at the link right here, send them a message, tell them you need them to co-sponsor the national moratorium on data centers so no communities have to face these extractive industries.
Okay. I think what this governor did, I don't particularly care for her, but in this case, I think she did the right thing. But, chances are this is not going to happen everywhere. It might be some other states, like I said, picking up on this. I think it should be stopped. In my state, there are 300 data centers. How many damn more do you need? How many do you need? It is just overkill. And these folks don't care if they just keep building them to the point where they build people out of their houses. They don't care. They don't care. That is the problem with dealing with Gentiles. It's all about them. They don't care who they hurt in the process. They could care less. And now you can see why the Most High want these people taken down. He's the only one that can do it. And, I just pray that we can reclaim everything back that belongs to us and finally get them out of the way. They have been in a way for way too long. And I know we are all worn out. We're tired. And it gets to the point now, even with Donald Trump, when I see him talk, it just turns my stomach. It turns my stomach for real. And I know I'm not alone. I know I'm not. It's been 400 years of staring at the same faces, and they're never going to do right by us. We already know that. Yeah, we are worn out. We are MGE 2020. Yes, we are. We are worn out. How much, you be thinking, okay, I know our people did deserve this punishment. The Heavenly Father would never have done this if our forefathers didn't do the things that they did. So we know why we're here. But we also want to make our right wrong. Make our wrong right and be on that right path so that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Thank you, Lisa, for Israel, for your super sticker. That's all we need. We just need that light at the end of the tunnel so that we can, I'll take the kingdom over this Gentile world any day. Any day, for real. This is what happens when the world was given into the hands of the wicked, and we never stop feeling the effects of their wickedness. That's the thing. That's the thing. We never stop feeling it. So, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and conclude. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support. And also, check out the hair products. Maybe some things you need. So you want to pick that up as well. So y'all have a wonderful afternoon. Be on the lookout for my next live. Shalom, family.